Every entrepreneur has a story. Welcome to Happy Half Hour with an Entrepreneur, where each episode your host, Brian Carney, will share a drink with a successful business owner and have them discuss their unique journey, gaining insight on what it takes to be an entrepreneur and the different ways to get there. Brian isn't just a beer nerd, he's also the co-founder of River's Edge Advisors, a financial planning firm headquartered in Delaware, specializing in working with business owners. It's time to pour yourself a drink and enjoy a happy half hour with an entrepreneur.
Hey everyone, welcome to Happy Half Hour with an Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Brian Carney. My guest today is Steve Masterson from WasteMasters Solutions. Steve is an Air Force veteran and current honorary commander of the Delaware National Guard. He's from Texas and has spent a long career in the waste management industry before co-founding WasteMasters in 2009. Steve, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you today. So for our show today, I'm going to be drinking an Oscar Blues, which is a brewery I happen to really like in Longmont, Colorado, but it's called a Good Night, and it's an Imperial Red Ale, which is not my favorite, but we're going to give it a shot. What are you going to be drinking?
That's pretty exciting. I'm going to stick to a Peroni, the Italian beer. Being 71% Italian, I feel like I have to be loyal to it, and it's good with pizza or anything else. So
I love it. I agree. All right, well, let's start. Tell us a little bit about your business.
Well, WasteMasters came about in 2008, 2009, during what was perceived a real awful time in business, and literally, I'd worked for public companies for 20 years, after the Air Force with waste management, and figured I'd give it a shot to make a run on my own, figuring I could always go back and work for the man if I failed, but failure was not an option. So we opened it up and we started off with just doing some refinery business. And from then on, it grew over the next 12 years to a pretty large company.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit about how an Air Force veteran from Texas ends up starting a business in the Northeast.
Crazy question, and it would be hard to answer quickly, but I'll give it to you quickly. Is when I was in the Air Force, I worked with the Space Shuttle program, and really as a rescue person. So we recovered aircraft. And after my career in the Air Force ended, I went with the Paso Fire Department, and thought I was going to stay in Texas the rest of my life in El Paso. Ended up having an accident at work and broke my back and my legs, so I couldn't be a fireman anymore. And I had an uncle up on the East Coast, my mother's brother. He had a big company and said, come up here and live in New Jersey and give it a shot. And I said, I'd like to live anywhere on earth other than New Jersey. Just cause, it was so foreign to me, even though I had visited before. But he said, hey, if you can make it in New Jersey and New York City, you can make it anywhere, like the Frank Sinatra song. Yeah. And which proved to be, spot on for me. So we moved up there, and we recovered a lot of aircraft all over the world as a private industry, commercial aircraft, because once they hit the ground, the insurance owns them, and there's a lot of money that could be saved in recovering engines and stuff like that. So we were making tons of money and didn't want to give it all to Uncle Sam. Yeah. And said, we better do something. So we got involved in hauling waste out of transfer stations in Bergen County, New Jersey. Sure. And that grew into a pretty big business, which defined me as a trash man full-time and a recovery person as a second time. So, you don't always get to pick your opportunities. Sometimes your opportunities pick you. And that's how I ended up on the East Coast, and always felt like I'd be going back home soon. And here it is, 22 years later, and I'm still on the East Coast, no closer than going home than I was back then. Yeah. So
how does one get into the business of working on planes that have crashed and finding out, ways to go through? That seems fascinating to me.
Well, it is, because, the Air Force, if an Air Force plane goes down, you don't let civilians touch it. You have trained people that touch it just because of technology, because of armament and stuff. So I was trained to do that. But what we found out is that in private industry, no one was recovering planes. Yeah. And salvaging a jet engine that could be $10 million. Right. So when we entered into that kind of knowing what we were doing, sort of, right? We had some expertise, but we learned as we went, and we didn't have any competition for 4 or 5 years. And once people realized what we were doing, and then they watched how we recovered a commercial aircraft at LaGuardia Airport in Grand Cayman, I recovered a 737. Other people started copycatting, but the thing is a superstructure in a plane. You support that. You save the jet engines if you can, and you turn a tragedy, in most cases, into just a recovery type of business.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So
it was a great time.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me a little bit about what did you do in the Air Force, and how did you being in the Air Force shape you as a person?
Well, I knew what I didn't want to do more than what I wanted to do. My father was a colonel in the Army, and I thought I was going to be a big time football player, and realized I was too slow for that. Right. So then reality sets in, and you're saying, like, what am I going to do? And I chose to go into the Air Force. I chose to go into, it's called a firefighter rescue. It's a medic position for me. So as an Air Force medic, along with the space shuttle starting to kick off, they needed people to work with the space shuttle to recover astronauts if it was a hard landing in any of the 3 different landing spots for it. So we trained. And luckily, nothing like that ever happened. We all know about the tragedies that happened in the air, where there wasn't any rescue event. It was a recovery event, but we trained for it. And it was an elite duty. Like, I feel like I've said it to my wife many times. I feel I've led a very Forrest Gump life, meaning that I don't know how I ended up there, right? Yeah. But I did, and it worked out. And I don't know how I ended up in the trash business, but it worked out.
Yeah.
So it's a very humbling thing when I watch Forrest Gump, because I really feel like it's the story of my life.
Yeah, that's an interesting analogy. I love it, and it makes sense.
Well, you can say I made this move right and I made this move wrong and stuff, but clearly, you work hard, you take some strategic risks, and some of them work out and some of them don't, and you just keep trying. And I was always a little bit of a risk taker by nature. So going out on the edge and trying something new was not scary for me. And for the most part, they worked out, and it put me in position to, open up WasteMasters with a business partner. And from there, Delaware, it was just pretty freaking amazing. It was a great place to be. Who would have known? I mean, I just got back from Greece, and people say where you're from, and I've always said Texas because that's where I'm from.
Sure.
But everybody in the boat our boat was from Delaware, so we'd say Delaware, and they're like, "Where's Delaware?" And we'd say by Philadelphia. Oh, that. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. How do they not know the first state?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. We get overlooked so horribly. And I'm used to being from Texas, where everybody knows where you're from, right?
Yeah.
So it's been some cultural changes for me, but Delaware's home now, and it's not going to change. And I'm very proud to be here.
I always find it interesting when people say from another part of the country, they say, where are you from? You say Delaware, and they go, well, what state's that in? I'm like, come on, man.
Right. No, exactly. And it's so insulting in one way, right?
Yeah.
And then, after a while, you just say, they're the one that isn't a rocket scientist. Right. If they don't know the first state in the country. But yeah, there was a bit of that. So we all laugh about that.
Yeah. Well, you bring up an interesting point about starting your business. And I feel like this is a common theme, that when you talk to people that have made that leap to entrepreneurship, that they sort of say, well, I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to bet on myself. And if it doesn't work out, I'll just go get a regular job. But it's no one ever actually expects to go back and get the regular job, but it's always sort of a good, that is always an option. That is, having that as a quote unquote worst case scenario is a really interesting.
It's a launching pad. I feel like there's 2 kind of entrepreneurs. There's one that are just creative, and they, always have this need to try to expand themselves. And then the other ones that just can't work for anybody else, so they have to work for themselves.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like they're not, they know what they want, and someone else telling them what to do doesn't work for them. And I've always considered myself a conforming nonconformist.
Right.
Like I was in the military, I came from a military family. I was with a public company. So I knew how to stay within the rules, but I never really liked it. Right. I wanted to try different things. And when you have your own business, right or wrong, you could try whatever you want a lot easier and quickly than a public company can.
Yep. Yeah. There's a book called The E-Myth that I've read a couple of times, which I think is really interesting. And it says most business owners or most entrepreneurs don't set out to say, like, I'm going to grow this awesome business. They work so and they go, I can do it better than this guy. And they just end up saying, so that's, as you mentioned, the second kind of business owner there is.
I think it started as a kid. I started mowing lawns because I needed money. I came from a military family, which is below the poverty line for sure in El Paso, which is almost Mexico. And I started mowing lawns and I got too many customers. So then I hired a guy to mow lawns and he was mowing lawns. And the next thing you know, I hired another guy. So then they were mowing lawns and I was just collecting the money.
Yeah.
A very, very Italian thing to do. But the next thing I knew, I had four or five guys mowing lawns. Yeah. And I would I would just take my cut off the top and they would mow the lawns. Like I had no clue what I was doing, but I knew that it was working. Right. So yeah. I was like, wow, I'm not sweating in 114 degrees weather. I'm just collecting money. So yeah, that was great. The start of my entrepreneurial spirit.
I love it. The thing I find interesting about WasteMasters is if you look at the trash business, one may say that it's sort of the commodity of all commodities, but you guys have done an incredible job branding yourself and sticking out. How have you been able to do that and really, differentiate yourself from the other companies that are out there?
So, working with the world's largest company, Waste Management, I had the opportunity to do a lot of mergers and acquisitions kind of things. And I saw a lot of people, how they did it right, how they did it wrong. And when we wanted to open up in Delaware, which is a disposal neutral market, which is an advantage to smaller business.
Yeah.
We wanted to stick out. We wanted to keep our equipment clean, our drivers sharp, and not be a trash company, but be a service company and a part of the community. And as we grew, these trucks became our billboards. And our number one call for people was, we saw your truck, and if you look at a lot of public company trucks, they look pretty tired considering, the $13 billion, but we took the approach is, hey, that's our billboards going down the street.
Yeah.
Let's make sure. And then looked at some studies where black was just an attractive color. It's not an easy color to keep clean, obviously. Yeah. Doesn't look good when it comes out of the landfill. But we would wash our truck. We wash our trucks twice a week to keep them clean so people notice them.
Yeah, well, I can you definitely attest to that and vouch for that. You see those trucks down even your dumpsters, they stick out. It's pretty amazing to be able to take.
It takes a lot of work to do that, but if that's your primary form of branding, then you should be doing that.
Yeah,
So
that's a great point.
We took that approach. Yeah.
So you start out you said in 2008, you started WasteMasters. Mm-hmm. How do you go from, starting out as a small company to working on huge events like Firefly and having giant clients like the Philadelphia Eagles?
By the seat of your pants.
Yeah.
We had done, I worked hard with Waste Management to be a part of NASCAR and Dover Downs, and we were partners for years. When we opened up WasteMasters, they were one of our first major clients, and it gives a mom and pop organization some legitimacy when it comes to branding, right? Hey, if you could do Dover Downs, you could probably do DuPont. And if you could do DuPont, you could probably do 3M. And if you could do 3M, you could probably do this. So, we learned the business, on the waste management side and literally just expanded it and changed it to be more service oriented on our side. And in the Firefly event, was a big one for us. Here's a medium-sized company, taking care of 114,000 people for 4 days, right?
Yeah.
We got our butts kicked a couple times, but we had a diversion rate of like 78%, which was really high. And there were Red Frog at the time who owned Firefly, a bunch of young people that had big ideas. And man, when I met them, I thought, man, they're a little crazy because they're way out there. They want to do content. But they were in charge and owned the Spartan runs and all that. So they had an idea of what crowds look like and stuff. And then we gave them the local flavor of what we could do in Delaware. And literally that NASCAR piece led to the Firefly piece, which ties into the Eagle piece. And, it's all kind of, because of a reputation. When you do something wrong, everybody knows it. But if you do something right in our area, everybody knows it. So it helped us. It really helped us expand quickly.
That's great. So I have to admit, I would imagine you have to be one hell of a salesman to be a Dallas Cowboys fan from Texas and be able to work with the Eagles. On the surface, that looks like that might not work.
Oh, hell yeah. It was crazy because they called us, right? And my wife and I were driving down the road, got a call, so-and-so from the Eagles wants to talk to you. So it was the day that they fired Chip Kelly. And so when I got on the phone, I said, hey, I'm not going to be able to coach the Eagles. I just can't do it. And they started laughing, right? And like, yeah, why not? And I said, well, I'm from Texas. And they're like, no. And said, how is this going to work? So, I said, well, what's up? Well, we have a lot of service issues at the link. We want to have someone here that'll really make it a priority. We've been to Firefly. We know what you could do. Let's see how we could work this out. And I said, well, not being a fan of the Eagles, I said, it'll be a hard sell to get a Cowboy fan to do that. But, literally, I've defined the Eagles as a family. I say the Cowboys are my football team because I don't believe in changing, right? And then, but the Eagles are my family and they treat us, everybody uses that partner word so freely today, but they truly treat us like a partner, and we're a small partner, in the big scheme of that. But literally, they're a mom and pop organization behind the scenes too. It's a handful of people working really, really hard to put on that big production, and the people and the players don't really care so much about hating the Cowboys. It's a job, right?
Sure.
So luckily, between some of my friends that have become lifelong friends now, Brett Selleck and Brandon Graham. Yeah. They're true and true Eagles, but they don't hate the Cowboys like the fans hate the Cowboys, or like the Cowboys hate the Redskins. Right. Like that rival is a fan thing for life. They could be playing on the next team the next week. So, their reality is hey, this is my job. I get paid to do it. I just got to do it really, really well. So it's really interesting to be behind the curtains of the Eagles because they're a phenomenal organization.
That's great. And I'd imagine the people that are filling your trash cans up with beer in the parking lots care a lot more about the Cowboys rivalry than.
And we don't talk about that.
Yeah.
I never bring up anything. I don't go to the Cowboy Eagles game there or in Texas. Like, I stay far apart because it's my family. Like, if they invited me to go to a game, probably it was the season before last. And I said, no, it's a no-win situation because my team will lose one way or the other. Whether the Cowboys win, I feel bad for the Eagles. If the Eagles win, I feel bad for the Cowboys. So 2 weeks out of every year, we just don't communicate.
That's
we just stay in our lane, act like we don't exist, and we don't talk about it the next week, no matter who won the game. It's like it never happened. And that way we are all one. And they've been a special organization to myself and my family. I'm very proud to be partners with the Eagles.
That's great to hear. So, you've talked about your family a couple of times. So you are, and this might be one of the biggest understatements of all time. You're one of the greatest family men ever. Talk about how you deal with the stresses of running a business and having 4 kids and a wife you've been married to for 25 years.
Yeah, 30. Yeah.
30 years.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And so talk a little bit about how you've been able to navigate that.
Well, it's all about your core values. I'm lucky that I've had a wife at home that was the CEO, and she always worked full time too, but she handled all the stuff at home while I handled all the stuff at work. And, we met in the middle and figured things out, and having 2 boys and 2 girls who now have, 4 little boy grandchildren of ours. We just make it a priority. Sunday dinner, is something that we do. We gather, we get along, we try to vacation together. You're in charge of your destiny. You're in charge of your legacy. And if your legacy is being a great businessman, but a terrible father, then I don't think that's a great legacy, or vice versa. You have to provide for your family. So sometimes you're given 65% to work and 45% to family. And then the other week, it's the other way around.
Yeah.
The true balance and the true goal is to make sure that you're good at both, not just be such a successful businessman that you leave the money, or such a slacker that you give them everything, all your love and stuff, but you didn't build anything for their future as well. So, that's what my wife and I have tried to do. And literally, she's a big piece of it.
For sure. Yeah. And it seems like after 30 years, just being around the two of you, it seems like you both genuinely like each other, which is no small feat after 30 years.
No, it's true. When you have your best friend, it's easy, but you have your moments, but when it's your best friend, you get over it quick and you get on to the other things. And, that's a family too. Like, we get to pick our friends, right? But you don't pick your family.
Yeah.
And, you live, this life of balance, say, all right, am I really thinking about what's really important? And I think now that I'm, a grandfather and I have a 10-year-old grandson and 3 little tiny ones now, I watch their parents, our children, and I'd say, don't sweat the small stuff. We tend to do that with parents. You're in a restaurant and your kid's crying. The only one that's stressed is the parent of the child. Everybody else is like, whew, we know how that is.
I've been
there.
What
I'm saying? Like, been there, done that, so, those are the lessons that you try to pass on to your kids, is like, don't worry about the small stuff. You got to worry about the bigger things. Choose your wars carefully, right?
Yeah. So when you look back, you mentioned the word legacy, which I think is a really important word. Is there a certain thing that you would love for your kids to say, my dad created this as our legacy? What would you love that to be?
Oh, I think it's the family, the bonding, not the vacation spot or a car or something, a physical thing. We always, in our family, say, collect memories, not things.
Yeah.
And we make the time, and it's not easy now with everybody, and everybody's got somebody, right? So if you say we're going to go here now, 10 people have to find a common week to go off or something like that. That's a challenge on, times 100. So, I respect what they do, trying to make it happen. And, they all bought in the same development and they all live on the same block, all 4 of my kids.
Amazing.
5 minutes away.
Yeah.
So that's Forrest Gump, because you as a father and a mother, you could plan it as best you can, but you can't make that happen. We're a lot of luck. 2 of my kids were in the service. They went away to different parts of the country, different parts of the world, and they came back to Delaware, and now they're on the same block as all their other siblings. And now I'm watching my kids raising their kids like a village, like a mom changing, another kid's, or who's yelling at what baby because he's doing something crazy. So it's that's a blessing. As a father, you can't plan those things. You just hope for them. And so, again, we feel very, blessed by that.
You could not have scripted that 30 years ago or 35 years
ago.
Oh,
hell, no, and everything is always in change, right?
Yeah.
Just like I had opportunity and I moved around, maybe one day they'll have an opportunity and have to move around.
Yeah.
And you can't say, well, don't go. We got this perfect system. Everybody lives within 5 minutes of each other.
Sure.
So you got to let them spread their wings. But man, it would hurt.
Yeah.
But, a good parent supports them, whether you agree with them or not. Right. So, I'm praying that don't happen, because they all have a baby that I like, even if, can you leave that one behind and just go yourself and leave the baby behind? Because it's much easier to be a grandparent than it is a parent, right? It's just much easier. I just say yes. And if they want chocolate and Mountain Dew before they go home, I'm all for that, right?
You'll deal with that with them. Yeah.
Yeah. That's your problem. That's not my problem. Yeah. So there's that.
One of the other things, that sort of ties into this, this values the values that you've tried to instill, is that you're incredibly charitably inclined. Talk a little bit about how much time and effort and, support you give to charities, and some of the ones that are important to you, and why.
Well, I think that growing up well below the poverty line, I had an appreciation for money, and knowing that if you didn't have any, my friends, we didn't know we were poor, because everybody around me was poor, right?
Yeah.
So, we would eat at each other's house, or, whatever the situation was. My mom passed away when I was 15 years old. And, my father was in the service, so we're raising ourselves, myself and my brother. But, literally, the village helped me stay on track. The Fellowship of Christian Athletes, I had a coach there named Joe Penny, my baseball coach, and he kept me in that. And at the time I didn't know what he was doing, but he was saying, hey, this kid could head to either side of the tracks really easy. He's got a lot of alone time. He's,
Good
and
point.
he kind of fathered me or big brothered me in a way. And, as I got older, I started to recognize, how people were to me, and you want to pay that back. And when you start to create a business and say, what do I want to do, is I want to give back to our community, because our community has given all of our 100 employees the opportunity to have a good living. And, so it's been very easy between Stop Soldier Suicide, the USO. I'm on the board for the USO. I stay a lot focused with the soldiers, but we do a lot of work with the Delaware State Police Mounted Patrol, the horses.
Yeah.
It's a wide bag, but what I find out is that you get more than you give.
Sure.
You can give a couple bucks, and that helps them immensely, and they're very grateful. But your ability to see smiles on a kid's face or something like that, it's worth, millions of dollars. So, I feel like, we're building bikes for kids this Saturday, charitable thing where you buy the bikes, you put them together, and then we're going to deliver them for local charities.
It's awesome.
Because it's the right thing to do. Yeah, it's just the right thing to do.
Yeah, that's incredible. We were a couple of weeks ago, we had this episode scheduled, but it was, right around the time that you sort of threw your energy into helping people that were stuck in Afghanistan get back to the United States. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I still stay in touch with a lot of guys that are on the ground, and, and literally when that thing went down, I wasn't in agreement on the way that we handled it.
Right.
And most soldiers were of that same agreement. The ones that were still in uniform can't say that out loud because they have to support the commander in chief and what we was, but the other ones were pretty angry. And what I realized in our veteran groups is that everybody wanted to do something. So we leveraged our relationships and found what we want to do, the guys on the ground in Afghanistan, to help bring out passported, both blue and green passported Americans. And I work close with Brian DeSabatino of BDIS, which we work with soldiers, Stop Soldier Suicide. In a very short time, we raised millions of dollars, because it takes millions of dollars in flights and helicopters and ammunition and payoffs of the Taliban to get, children and women, out of the country. And you do it for a lot of different reasons. And, to me, what I've always failed to not get my arms around is, even a terrorist, has a family, right? He has a wife, he has a daughter. And yet these men that call themselves God-fearing men, or whatever God that is, will take these kids and sell them into slavery, sex age, and that's how they raise money. Yeah. For years, this has been a thing. I abduct your little girl, less than 10. I either keep her for myself or I sell her to, an Asian market or a Russian market or, a Middle Eastern market. And that's how they fund terrorism.
Yep.
And so for many years, we've been involved in taking people out, but this caused a great shift in Afghanistan of girls thinking that they were going to go to college and they were going to be free, to having to hide. And in my mind, we just had to do something. And these guys, our friends, went in, and hate to be so vague about it, but their families are still at risk here, in other places, and they're still over there on the ground. But we had 300 girls in a Christian nursery, guarded for a couple nights, protecting them, and got them out safely.
That's amazing.
Yeah, they're orphans, but they would have been part of the sex trade. And you just I can't sleep at night knowing that I didn't do nothing.
Yeah.
So everybody could do something, and whatever you do helps, and we did fundraisers of magnitude. Tim Tebow got involved, Glenn Beck was involved, some real big companies participated. Not everybody wanted their name on a label, right? Because, there's some politics involved in it, but the common person, my friends, raised tens of thousands of dollars of just Americans that wanted to help.
Yeah.
And, my America isn't what I see on TV,
Sure.
the far left and the far right. When there's something going on, we rally around each other, and we're not Republican and Democrats. We're Americans. So I was very proud of the response that we got. And you can give $10, or if you can give $1 million, it's the same thing. You're just trying to do something to help. And we really stepped up as a country to do that.
I love the idea that you're watching something unfold and you go, I don't like that. I need to help. I need to do something. A lot of people stop there and just say, I need to do something.
Right.
I don't know what to do. I'll just, not do anything. So kudos to you. That's incredible.
Thank you. Well, I think that, most of us Americans try to figure it out, but we stop when we get frustrated of, I don't know what it is to help.
Exactly. Yes.
So, I'm more tenacious than that, and, older, and, I know people. So, it's easier to kind of continue the struggle. So,
yeah, no, that's great. So I want to go back to talk a little bit more about WasteMasters, because you had a exciting event happen this year. You guys were purchased. So can you talk a little bit about your experience about that, going through that acquisition and highs and lows, and, did anything happen that you didn't expect? So talk a little bit about that process.
Well, literally, it was over a year ago, and it's still off the radar screen. I'm talking to you about it. Someone asked us about it. We talk about it, but WasteMasters still functions the same as it did before we merged with Waste Connections as the company.
Yeah.
Out of Texas, $7 billion, really great core people. I was not looking. We were an acquisition company, WasteMasters. We were not a seller, but 2020 was, a unique year for, 100 reasons, right? Besides the pandemic, there was just the election. So you have all that, right? So, and then all of a sudden that's getting, politicized and stuff. But there's just a perfect storm that put us where Wall Street was looking for these public companies to still grow.
Yeah.
And we were approached by everybody for many years to be partnered with. And literally Waste Connections was our kind of guys. They're boots and jeans. They wanted to keep the company WasteMasters. They want to keep it black and some red on the cans. They want you to still stay in charge of it. So we were considered a market entry for them and into the Philadelphia region. And we went back and forth. It was easy to reach the financial goals because we didn't want to sell. We didn't need to sell.
Yeah.
So we had a pretty hard line. This is what it's going to take, and we decided to go that path. And then, the work begins after that. All the lawyers are involved, and, there's some of that. But, literally we thought about how it impacts our customers. How would it impact our internal customers, our employees? What does it mean? And we picked the right company. They're very much of a people company. I think our core values at WasteMasters are the same at Waste Connections. Yeah. It's a good group of people. And over a year has gone by now, that we've been together, and 99% of our clients and customers haven't seen a difference. They don't know.
Yeah.
I'm still running the place. They're still the same people that I've worked with for 20 years, in the building. There was no turnover about it. And really what it puts you in a position, Brian, is our employees benefited the most because there's better benefits as a giant company. Sure. 401k, healthcare and stuff. And, frankly, I and my business partner we were worried about what the Biden tax plan was going to do to us. Sure. And, I felt somewhere around September, October that this election wasn't, going to go right. It was going to probably go left, and the window of closing this deal and getting it done before the government takes more and more away from you. Yeah. If I told you what they took in taxes, but I know it was aspirating. I mean, it really was just so angry that, you pay taxes every single day, you're paying payroll, you pay this tax. Then when you sell your business, they come in and they want so much of it for selling it. Right. So, it was a good guess on our part, that, the election went Democratic, and, now they're looking to continue to raise taxes. So we got out at the right time. Yeah. I don't know if that'll happen in the next decade. Sure. Or so. But we also, was acquired by a company that cares about the people. And that was so important. It wasn't like a private equity deal where, 3 weeks after the deal is closed, you start asking, do you really need that person? Do you need that person? There has been nothing. As a matter of fact, you've already gotten 2 wage increases, under their belts in the year period of time, plus their benefits stuff. So I'm very happy and proud that the majority of the people are very happy with the transition, so.
Yeah. So I find it interesting. I'm sure when you opened the doors in 2008, you never thought that you were going to sell to a $7 billion company. That's never the intention, right?
Well, no, in our industry, there are a lot of that. Let's build it and sell it. Let's build it and sell it. It's always been, it wasn't Brian and I's thought to do that. And that's why we were such a diverse company.
Yeah.
We weren't just a waste company. We had portable restrooms.
Yeah.
We have the trucking company. There's so much to us because we felt like no matter which way the industry's things happen, we always had, other lines of business. So we were never built to sell.
Right.
And not every trash company would buy a WasteMasters because of how diverse we were in operations. This company liked that part of us, and like that we do a lot of refinery work, like that we do, the portable restrooms, the sanitation part of the business. So, I think that what we thought we were doing for us worked out, for someone else as well,
Yeah, for sure. What advice would you give to someone that owns a company that isn't really thinking about selling, but starts getting a call? What would you, sort of do to help them prepare to be ready when they actually get that call from someone that's very serious about wanting to have them tuck into their bigger organization?
I think the hardest thing is the due diligence part of a sale. We ran WasteMasters like it was a public company. We did things right. We kept our books right. We were able to normalize our P&L based on, some things that all business owners put inside their business. So if you have your ducks in a row before you ever have a conversation, it makes things a lot easier, right? Because you're able to pull documentation, you dump it into a data room. And if you don't like what they're saying pretty quickly, you could just say, I'm good.
Yeah, good
I'll
point.
find somebody else, but if you don't have, and we've done a couple acquisitions in this last year with Waste Connections for WasteMasters, and they didn't really have their ducks in a row. So that works against you. You really have to show it. And a lot of mom and pop businesses don't have time to do some of that. We invested in our infrastructure inside the building to make sure that we could always be able to account to us.
Yeah.
And then when you go to a public company, it's just right there.
For sure.
Jeff Mitchell from Siegfried, you know him pretty well.
Yep.
He kept us in line, doing stuff and, making sure we dotting our I's and crossing our T's. So, they were a big help during a transition team too. So, if you don't have your act together and you think you're going to sell your business, it's going to stress you out tremendously. If you have your act together and you think you want to sell your business, the process is much easier.
Yeah, it sounds like it helps take care of itself a little bit if you
have. Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Do you always hear when someone sells a company that the owner has a really tough time dealing with the new manager? It doesn't seem like you've had that issue at all whatsoever, which is a fantastic thing, right? How has your?
Yeah, but I would say that that's not accurate, right?
Okay.
Because when you're an entrepreneur and you're the owner of the company, you do what you want when you feel like you want to do it, right?
Sure. Yeah.
To go back to having to ask someone what to do, business owners struggle with that, right?
Yes, for sure.
And I think that, because of my experience in the public sector, my father didn't run this company and then I took it and sold it. I've worked for public companies before. So getting in line was a little bit easier.
Yeah.
But not easy. It's not easy because you know what you need to do and stuff. And now you got to ask somebody, hey, thinking about doing this, getting involved in that. And they're like, oh, well, tell us why you want to do it. It's like, because it's a good idea. Like, you don't want to spend all the time. And that's why I think private companies kick public companies' butts, because of the speed of decision making.
Yeah.
You make it in a conference room with your team and it's done. And in corporate America, you got to run it up the flagpole. And sometimes that pole is really high, like almost to the moon. And that's a frustrating thing. And
Yeah.
I probably went through some buyer's remorse for a little bit because, there's that period where you're saying like, I really don't like telling somebody what I'm doing, but it worked its way through because they're good people. And, now, we're in a different rhythm. I see, myself, continuing with WasteMasters, which is Waste Connections, for a long time because they really let you run the business.
Yeah.
So, that's the plan.
That's great because you sometimes you get that hover effect where, I remember I saw the gentleman that sold Happy Harry's to Walgreens. Saw him speak once, Alan Levin, and he said he barely made it. I think he said 6 months or a year because he was tired of having, quote unquote, a boss tell him what to do and say, well, we used to do it this way. And they would say, well, that's not how we do it anymore.
Right. I consulted with those guys.
Yeah.
Alan is a great ally, and Alan helped WasteMasters come out of Maryland into Delaware, a long time ago when he was with the economic development or whatever it was called, DEDO, I think it was, Delaware Economic Development. So, I had guys that had been there before and sought some advice from them. And there is that, right? Because you know the market better than anybody else and all that. And a lot of people told me, it'd be surprised if you make it 6 months. But my due diligence on this company was, this is the kind of company that I think that I could work for. So if I could work for it, I'm sure my people could work for it. So it was much different than, other ones where you're just seeking to make the most amount of money. I think Brian and I could have shopped it and drove a little bit harder deal that personally would have helped us more.
Yeah.
However, this is a good landing spot. And I think even we were just up in New York City with the employees of Waste Connections, and they came in from a regional standpoint. I watched my people interconnect with their people, and they're all laughing and they're all getting along. It seems like, a year later, and we were a COVID baby. So what I mean by that is like, you do this acquisition last October, the world shut down again in November. So, now you're a part of a big public company, but you didn't have no visitors. You didn't have, this stuff. So, we're excited about 2022.
Yeah.
Because, I believe that the world will be opening up more and more, and then you get to expand your horizons within the organizations and find out how much it helps you having $7 billion behind you to continue to grow and service your customers. It's a win-win.
That's powerful for sure. Yep. Well, this is great. I really enjoyed talking to. I think your analogy of living a Forrest Gump life could not be more accurate. I love that analogy. It's great.
Well, if you take all the credit for everything that you do, you better find a way to take the blame for the stuff that you do too. So I blame it all on Forrest Gump, right? Sometimes it happens and it works out fine, and sometimes you get shot in the butt in Vietnam, right? It just happens. So I feel like my life has been that way, and I'm very grateful, and humbled by how my life. But again, I don't think I could have done it without my family, my friends, and my faith, right? Yeah. Those are just some of those pillars of your foundation. If you don't have them in the right spot, probably the chances of your success are much less.
Yep, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Steve. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about Steve and WasteMasters, go to wastemasters.com. If you want to connect with me on the Untapped app where I rate beer, my username is brcarney7. To learn more about how our firm helps business owners with their financial planning, visit riversedgeadvisors.com. And finally, to hear past episodes of the podcast, go to happy-half-hour.com. Now, I have to rate this beer. Not going to lie, not my favorite style. So I am going to give this, it's a pretty strong beer, 8.7% alcohol. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5. It's just, I don't like red ales. So, and then obviously Old Reliable Peroni, that's got to be high up on the list. So that's going to get a good rating for you.
Yeah, I give it a good rating. I'm not 100% of a beer guy, but when I, it's like wine, beer, whiskey. If you like it, you like it. Yeah. Doesn't matter how much the label is or what it costs. If you like it, you like it.
Now, I've recently come across, I have heard about the drink in Texas, ranch water.
Oh yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's outselling a lot of others. I think that I heard, it's the number one selling one in Texas, obviously, but now it's really growing. So
that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah, you can get it in Delaware.
I'll have to find it now. No, I have to give it a shot. Love it.
I know you will. I have a lot of confidence in you. Yeah.
Steve, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
No, the pleasure is mine. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Happy Half Hour with an Entrepreneur, sponsored by River's Edge Advisors. For more information on how River's Edge Advisors can help you, visit their website at riversedgeadvisors.com. If you'd like to connect with Brian Carney for business advice or just to share a beer, follow him on Instagram at riversedgeadvisors_LLC.